Hello, this is me recording about a book review by a guy called Guy Anderson, and his book is called Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. This is the book I am on about. I have written notes from this book because I think it's actually quite mind-blowing. As you can see, I had lots of these on this book. It's just the ones that I haven't finished writing about. Now, I have written an 8-page book review on this piece of work, which I write here. Double-sided, small writing. I don't like using up paper as much as the next person. I just wanted to talk about what's inside of this book and why it's mind-blowing. So, here it goes. Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids has 16 chapters in all. I'll list all the chapters on here. So I wanted to walk through what each chapter was about, as I written summaries of each chapter briefly. So you 16 chapters, just double checking because I don't want to get it wrong. It took me 2 days to read this book. I am quite avid reader. I love reading, especially non-fiction books, especially controversial non-fiction books. So I'll go into what each chapter is about. So chapter 1, has history been rewritten? Now, me and my father discuss this all the time because he's mentioned how there's about 200 to 500 years he thought that there was nothing spectacularly that happened in the history of Britain anyway. And where's all the information and literature in that period is quite quiet, and it seems like we've been going backwards instead of forwards and advancing. So anyway, that's what got me onto this book, because my mind has gone blank. Just bear with me. This is me really recording this. I'll just go on with the book. Number 1, has history been rewritten? So what I've written down in chapter 1 is the Vatican and Jesuits added 800 years to current timeline. Proof by Antelli Fomenico. Sorry if I butcher your name. A topologist written New Chronology book. So I'd like to read that next. Charles Darwin, on deathbed, stated he didn't believe his own theories and was paid by the Vatican. That seems for me to be a fraudster. Or unbribed. But surprise there. This was done by Scaligian chronologist Joseph Gallagher, a Jesuit responsible for the timeline we know today, that we still follow, which is wrong. I'd like to find out more about this because I am a truth seeker. I'd like to know the truth. I'm passionate about the truth. I don't like being lied to, and if this is the case, then this is big. German historian Robert Baldauf wrote History and its Criticisms in 1903, proving early Middle Age history was forged. We are a lot closer to Greek and Roman empires than we are led to believe by 500 years. The book Roman History by Titus Livius describes a 700-year period of Roman history based on an unknown manuscript. This can be substantiated by Theodore Mommsen. So it's quite worrying how there's quite a lot of people that that are writing about the same thing, which means they must have stumbled across information that you and the everyday Joe Blogs hasn't stumbled across before. So it does feel like we aren't that far behind the Roman history. And in fact, I still think we're in the Roman Empire anyway, because we still use Roman numericals. There's still Roman numericals on established and founded buildings, so we'll get into that later. That's the end of my summary of chapter 1. So there is about 2-3 things that I would like to research more on. Is the Scaligian chronology, The second thing is, why add more time onto the timeline? It just doesn't make sense. And Vatican and Jesuits were behind this. Why lie? Why lie about the timeline? Unless you wanted to hide something. Second chapter. Moving on to the second chapter. This is only a small summary because I know most of this anyway. The elite equals the parasitic race. The ruling elite have created wealth through taxation and ownership of vital commodities like gas, oil, pharmaceuticals. They are often paid with taxpayers' money and never seem to break into a sweat. I agree with this, and I've heard this plenty of times. That HMRC thingies, civil servants pay a family group, a certain family member of groups that the money all goes to. Like, you have to pay how much for the birth certificate? Like £20, I think, because I had to get a birth certificate for my 2 children. So I know you have to pay money for this, and I did wonder where that money goes to for a certificate. I don't think a certificate costs that much to make, and why you need it in the first place. And I know that relates back to the Great Fire of London in 1666. Well, a fire ain't great if it wipes out a lot of the population. That's just disrespectful, in my opinion, to call it the Great Fire of London. It should be the disastrous fire of London or something like that. Not the great. Nothing great about a fire wiping out loads of people. Yeah, I've been going on a tangent. Moving on. Number 3. Chapter 3. The Tartarian Empire. This is probably one of the most chunkiest summaries I have, because this is the first time I've truly come across this, which I find extremely interesting and fascinating. This empire encompassed Russia, most of Asia, and spanned the east coast of America. The list of literature that refers to Tartaria are as follows: A Comprehensive System of Modern Geography and History, Edwin Williams, 1835. The Story of England, Makers of the Realm, Arthur Bryant, 1953. A History of Europe, 1610 to 1715, W.F. Redaway. Voyages and Travels of Marco Polo, Rusticolo da Pisa. News from Tartaria, Peter Fleming, 1936. The City and the Tsar, Harold Lamb, 1951. Now, the capital of Tartaria Empire, Samarkand, and each region was governed by a Khan or prince. Now that sounds more of Eastern society than Western society. The ethos was heavily focused on spiritual growth, healing using frequency and vibration, which I've come across through like metal tongs. I see them people waving like sound frequencies around people's heads. I'm quite into spirituality, even though I'm not religious in any form or the sense, and my family's not. So I found spirituality to be quite interesting, and I am fascinated with Buddhism. So when I came across this, it was like, whoa, something that speaks to me. The Tartarians practice Feng Shui. I've heard of that recently as well. Feng Shui, when constructing the most incredible buildings aligning with ley lines, the energy grids of the earth, where most of beautiful landscapes and architecture sit upon. It was also known as people called breatharians. I'm not sure if I'm butchering the name, but breatharians, a being that does not rely on eating food for sustenance, rather getting its energy from the ether in the same way plants do. Yeah, through photosynthesis. Or is that a lie as well? Tartarians studied the Book of Changes, the science of refining one's own energy with the goal of living a long, enlightened life. When someone was sick, a teacher from Tibetan Buddhism was sought after. Again, see, I like the Tibetan Buddhists. Tartarians were well dressed in reference to a steampunk sort of style. Well, that more relates to self-esteem as well. If you're not well dressed, you're not going to feel your best. Tartarians understood the importance of 5 elements, not 4, that govern the planet and everything on it, but the powers that be removed them. the ether from the list from the elements during the 1800s to avoid us paying any attention to it. The 5 elements are land, water, air, fire, ether. By understanding how to harness energy from these elements, Tartarians were able to create free electricity and manipulate frequencies through schematics, the study of sound and vibration. Now, I hear also Michael Jackson use schematics in his songs, and I don't know how true that is, but I think they're onto something, because especially when you go in and hear classical music in an opera house, for instance, you feel touched by some of the songs, or overwhelmed with emotion. If you see a good opera piece anyway. Their work can still be found today in churches and cathedrals in seeing identical window apertures and designs using sacred geometry, which is again fascinating in its own sense. Now, that was the biggest summary there was a lot of juicy parts in the Tartarian Empire, which I'd like to find out more from, and I gave a list of names of books that people have written, loads of lists of books that people have written. I will also put it in the video for you to reference to. The next chapter number 4, is about Tartarian architecture, cathedrals, churches, and star forts. But this is my second biggest summary of the chapter. You say that Washington DC and London share identical architectural features and each have an obelisk structure that's pointy at the top. It's also in The Witcher quite a lot. The film The Witcher, anyway. Several researchers of the Old World believe monuments that include obelisks signify population control in that particular era. I've never come across this, so this was an interesting point to see, because I've never come across it. Tartarians focused all their architecture on using high and harnessing frequencies. Your body was being exposed to 528 Hz, a technique known as esoteric architecture, and harnessing energy known as schematics. Never heard the term esoteric architecture or schematics for that instance. So that's something I'd definitely look into in the future. Tartarians built on magnetic ley lines, subtle energies on Earth's surface. This is also known as telluric energy, and Tartarians placed huge importance on this. So the ether and the energy, because we are electromagnetic beings, is being neglected in the Western societal world unless you do your own research. The schools don't teach you this, public schools don't teach you this, unless you progress into spirituality yourself. There's a term called apus pipes from organs as well as bells that emit at the frequency of 440 Hz, and stained glass windows were made from crystals, with each colour representing a different chakra. And I find this fascinating as well, because I hear that certain crystals emit certain frequencies. I would have no idea where to start with what crystals do what, or what rocks and minerals do. But it's eye-opening. When people are more healthy and happy, they were more productive and creative. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, actually. American inventor Roy Raymond Rife worked intensely on healing people with frequencies, and his technologies are still used. Rife based his ideas on work of Albert Abrams, who believed diseases gave off electromagnetic frequencies. He claimed that his Rife frequency generator could detect and get rid of cancer by tuning into its electrical impulses. Now that's interesting, because I have another book called Body Electric. Body Electric, mentioned from Dr. Jack Kruse's Convention of Alternative Medicine, and they mention about healing through electric and electromagnetism, because we are, after all, electromagnetic beings. We give off energy. So I think he's onto something here. He's definitely onto something here. But of course, the MAA condemned Rife's experiments. Oh, too alternative for you, MAA. A rare book Anderson stumbled across whilst researching star forts, titled Sea Coast Fortifications of the United States by Emmanuel Raymond Lewis. I'm not sure about star forts. There's more to it in this book than I can summarize in this book review, but the star forts have been repurposed for different things, so like military industrial complexes, hospitals, prisons, mental asylums. So, yeah, that's my first page now. The next chapter I speak about is Lost Tartarian Technology. Tesla, a possibly fictitious character, made from parasites to explain the discovery of what was actually Tartarian technology. If he did exist, then it's more probable he reverse engineered the technology. Now this would make sense considering all the fascinating patents he's made over the years and the inventions he's made really, really rapidly. Either that or he's a freaking genius who tapped the universe for its secrets. Tartarians were already masters of harnessing clean and safe energy from the ether. Each large structure, like palaces, mansions, and centers of healing, had Tesla-style coils fitted with the roof. These coils consisted of an antenna at the top, followed by a resonator and then capacitor, which stored the electricity generated. Research in coherent electrostatic acceleration. Electric forces hold our planet together at Earth's surface, but gravity holds the Earth's place in the solar system, created from other planets, stars, and galaxies. Electricity comes from quartz under pressure. As silicon dioxide it gives off an electron. The Earth's crust is over 25% quartz. The Earth rotates and electrons fly outward, creating one magnetic field and lightning is nothing more than those same electrons shortening back down to Earth in the form of very large static shocks. And if you didn't know, your negative wire and ground wire are connected together inside your breaker box. So your unused electricity goes into ground. If this is true, then we are paying for a supply of energy that is gathered for free. And this is very controversial, this idea, because we are wasting our time working to pay for energy bills when that money could be used for something else. And we're making someone else rich when we can make it or access it for free ourselves. Now this riles me up, and I'm sure it riles a lot of people up, as I can see from the Redacted podcast, Candace Owens podcast, and so many other podcasts that I'm not paying attention to. But I would need to see that for myself and research that for myself to believe it. But I've seen a lot of videos recently on platforms that are supposed to censor, now not being censored, showing us that electricity can be harnessed through the ether. Space. It's also called space. What we're in now is space. Now, if that's true, well, I think it's true. I've seen it, but I need to prove it for myself. Then I'm actually disgusted with the companies and corporations that have allowed people to work while they put the prices up of fuel and energy when it could be for free. That means we could all be fuel sovereign, have energy at the touch of our hands, with not needing a third party, with not needing to pay extortionate prices for something that we could have for free. And if that's the case, they've prohibited mankind from advancing. Why would we want to do business with people like that? I certainly wouldn't. Would you? I don't think so. Tartarians connected through electricity they harnessed to a network of metal grids under city roads, which enabled them to run trams without overhead cables or tracks. Wow. That would certainly be something to see. Salt water created electrolysis, which conducted alternating current. This harnessed in their buildings created electromagnetic energy known as magnetricity. This could power the whole ship, clean endless supply, and it was free. What he's saying is in this book is this is what I mean by mind blowing. So not only we were lied to about our history and it's been rewritten, but access to energy and physics. What we get taught in schools. No application to the real world whatsoever. No application to the real world whatsoever. Oh, this is a journey that I'm not coming back from. Pneumatic underground trains, and one example in 1869, Beach Pneumatic Transit Company. I love this name. I know, I'm sure loads of people love this name. Rockefeller. No profit from his oil empire if they were using electric or pneumatic powered vehicles. Lobbied Congress. Was a greedy, evil psychopath. The whole family. Mention of something called the creation of homophone. Mention of the Vajra is said to be able to harness energy from the ether and can be used as a weapon, light, or a laser gun. I would have to see that to believe it. I need to go to India to see that. It sounds magical. Now, the next chapter is chapter 6, Fire, Flood, and Comet of 1811. Dues. Direct energy weapons. Wars. Parasites still need people to work. Parasites, we refer to them, we mean the elite race, the elite bloodlines that rule the world, the globalists, whoever you want to call them, they're all the same stuff, aren't they? Oh, yeah, the parasites don't know how to farm and work for themselves. A New Madrid earthquake had a magnetic pull so great it made metal objects stick together. The Mississippi River changed direction by 180 degrees, and the animals became wild and untamable. That reminds me of that film on Netflix made by Obama. The End of the World or something it was called. I think you know what I'm referring to. I'll post it beside me if you know what I'm talking about. Mud floods, or referred to as deluge, severe flooding, or melting of snow on glaciers or mountains, washed buildings and people away. Well, I can believe that, to believe deluges, because it happens where we live quite often. When it rains too much and we don't have a drainage system put in place, it floods every so often, every winter, pretty much. That's all I've got on chapter 6, but there is way more on this chapter. That's the only summary that I got from this. Number 7 was the Napoleonic civil and world wars. People sent to wars under false pretenses to unknowingly assist in destruction and civilization, then take control of countries we had no legal right or reason to invade. Like Ukraine, like Iraq, like colonizing other countries through the British Empire, like the Highland clearances, like loads of other things. And especially when Elon Musk mentions how they send the young working class population to kill each other whilst people and the leaders sit back arguing over things that has nothing to do with the people. Yeah. Moving on. The Epic of Gilgamesh. greatest masterpieces of cuneiform literature, published by Professor Paul Hobst, translated to English from Sumerian. Now, I've written a side note of this because I went on a tangent because I didn't know what cuneiform literature or the Epic of Gilgamesh was, so I did a little bit of more research into it. So, there was a man called George Smith who worked in the British Museum in the 1870s, and he taught himself how to read ancient texts like cuneiform, Greek, and Egyptian hieroglyphics. Cuneiform is linked to the King Gilgamesh. He wrote a book called The Chaldean Account of Genesis. He worked at the British Museum. I've already said that. Now, this is interesting because the British Museum had the tablet surrounded by King Gilgamesh's tomb. So, what's it doing in the British Museum when it's nowhere near Britain? It's in Iraq. Huh. So, yeah, I found that interesting. If you want to learn more, I'd suggest you research into it as well. It's funny that when the tomb was discovered, there's a BBC report of it in 2003 where a professor found it because the river dried up and they used technology to find this tomb, and it was a big, massive giant. They're also known as Nephilim. I'm not sure if I'm butchering the name, because he's supposed to be part god and part human. There was a tomb full of him preserved, and all gold being surrounded by him. The Epic of Gilgamesh is published by the Penguin and other publishers, I think. Don't quote me on that, I'm not sure, but whenever we looked into it, it looks like it's, published by Penguin's Home, so I'll have a look into that. Any threats to the British Empire, a smear campaign began against Germany due to technological advancements. Cecil Rhodes, a name, requested publication of his last will and testament following his death and left finances for the British Empire to dominate the world. I don't really know my history that well of the UK. You're not taught about it much in public school here in the UK. You're taught about American history, the Hippocratic Oath, and America, strangely enough, but not your own country that you reside in. Anyway, another matter for another matter. I find Cecil Rhodes interesting because I've seen that name pop up quite a lot, so I'd need to do more research into that as well. Apparently, Hitler despised Rothschild and Jewish banking monopoly and took the decision to remove their control. Thus, World War II began due to trade wars. I've also heard that Churchill was paid money to declare war on Germany, and I don't know how true that is, but I've heard that in the mix of things. I would need to do my due diligence to find out whether that's true or not. Apparently, the falsification of history by John Hamer illustrates this. I've heard his name quite a lot, and I've seen him on Richard Phobe's podcast. So I think I would look into that myself and read his book at some point. And I'll give you a book review on his chunky book. It's like the size of that. So, yeah, another read that I'd have to do. Next. Yes, this. Okay. I'm trying to look for page 8 because I've written page 8. Yeah. Chapter 8, sorry. Whitewashing, repurposing, and world fairs. Whitewashing means to prevent anyone knowing of the previous civilization and the incredible and technological advanced society that they had established. Parasites came up with stories of enslavement of African American courtesy of the British Empire. Wow. just wow, I need to take a moment there because that is so sadistic and evil. To destroy history and stake claim to America was to enslave them, change their names, and force them to speak English by re-educating them. Those that refused were killed, and their children would grow up knowing nothing about their past and give an alternative narrative where early white settlers had civilized America. Whitewashing denies people of their history and incredible achievements of their ancestors. And that's true, because if you don't know your ancestors, you don't really know your identity, and you kind of walk in lost because you don't know where you came from, who you are. I think it is, out of respect, important to know your ancestors, whether you find out to be good or bad people. I've always been interested in my bloodline and who was before me. I'm not sure you would be too, if you had the opportunity to meet them and speak to them. No, I certainly would. And in fact, I've learnt as much as I can from my family and who came before us. I used to enjoy talking about their parents and parents before them, and well, it gets lost after 2 or 3 generations, and most don't live beyond that. So we have 5 generations on my partner's mum's side because, well, they all had children young, which is lucky. Lucky. So yeah. Where were we? The ancestors left beautiful listed buildings to disrepair because it can be opened for the homeless, who start fires in the buildings to keep warm, and once fire damaged, they can be sold off to developers, even if they were listed buildings beforehand. I'm not sure. Does that happen in the UK? I didn't know that, but I think Guy Anderson is from the UK because he mentions about being a Freemason in London, so must be in the UK. Just let me know what you think. The reason that buildings are founded or established. Now, I did wonder this because you see EST on buildings, and I'm thinking, does that mean built or founded? What does that mean? Rather than built, the reasons that buildings are founded or established rather than built is because the parasites are adhering to karma and universal law, meaning for their prophecies to come true, they must not lie, but instead they omit or change the subject. One building we see this happen is the St Paul's Cathedral in London, founded in AD 604. The present structure completed in 1710 AD, with the timelines being possibly 800 years behind. Remove the one from 1710, given 710 could mean this cathedral was built taking 100 years to complete. Now that would make more sense if that was the case. 106 years, to complete. Why are places of great importance like Buckingham Palace never destroyed during the Blitz of World War II, yet Dresden in Germany was completely flattened? It just makes you think that they are all friends. Why were orphanages and asylums in beautiful buildings sat in acres of land, and with entrances like Roman villas? Why would the leaders purpose build beautiful buildings of people that they wanted out of the way? Maybe they were already there and were repurposed instead. That appears more logical, because we don't see these beautiful buildings being resurrected or built. In modern terms, it's mostly like glass and steel, ugly, thickened buildings. Not spirals and symmetrical apertures and stained glass windows of beauty and high ceilings. And we're supposed to be the more advanced species? I think not. If these people were simpletons, how did they construct such beautiful architecture with just a horse, cart, and chisel? And how do most of these buildings around the globe look so similar in style, built around similar timelines, and yet are supposedly never connected with each other? That's a very true point. Why are buildings looking similar in different places, in different locations that are supposed to be miles and miles away? If that's the case, how did they get there? How did they build the structures so close in time when they didn't have access to aeroplanes or ships that travelled that fast? It doesn't make sense at all. If you think about it critically, he's onto a point. This guy Anderson, and so many others before him. Chapter 9. Vanilla Skies. Victorian photoshopping, also known as old photo manipulation, layering, sky swapping, occurred in the 1840s. So Photoshop wasn't just around in our time, it was around 2 centuries before us. Examples of fake photos include 1871, famous French photographer Ernest Eugene Appiat produced a series of fake images known as crimes de la commune to discredit communards protecting against the royalist-leaning government put into power after the end of Napoleon Wars. The dangers of this was used as propaganda, especially for world wars. I don't know if I believe this, but I'd have to look into what you're saying about crimes de la commune. Yeah, because they're examples. Chapter 10, I've only wrote a really small piece on chapter 10, which is asylums. Until 1800s, mentally unwell were looked after by their friends and family, but then suddenly dozens of purpose-built facilities were made. Overcrowding and neglect at mental asylums. 1845 Lunacy Act gave permission for inmates to be experimented on legally. I studied psychology, and one of my essays was written on IQ, intelligent quotient tests. And I found out that these tests were not fit for purpose and were not made for normal people. And when I say normal, I mean neurotypical people. And neurotypical people are people without learning difficulties. Autism, ADHD, learning difficulties. The IQ tests were actually made for people that struggled to learn back in the 1800s. So I know a little bit about this. It was also a study by Rosenhan, I think in 1975, Sane in Insane Places, where Rosenhan pretended to be insane when he wasn't. He was sane. He was normal, like you and me. And he found out that when he was admitted into these mental asylum, psychiatric hospitals, it was very, very difficult for him to come out of those. For him to be tick boxes to say that he was fine again. Very, very difficult. The other thing is as well, you could be committed for a range of ridiculous reasons. Your children would become orphans and property of the state. There are images in the book that I'm talking about. Images in the middle of this book between chapter 10 and 11. Loads of images. Next chapter is about prisons. A lot of people did seem to be incarcerated. Criminal Law Act made in 1776, a reset that occurred like what seems to be happening with Agenda 2030. Why was there all of a sudden an overwhelming need to incarcerate people? Good question. Like they are doing with political prisoners in the UK. Keir Starmer. And journalists. Changing the legislation for the benefit of the leaders. The downfall of the people living in it. Number 12. Orphans and orphan trains. Orphanages didn't peak in demand until the end of 1700s and the start of 1800s, where there was a boom in homeless children. On par with the Napoleonic Wars and Civil Wars, which cost the lives of thousands of men. Widows always lost custody of their child following the death of a husband. Wow. See, that's changed. Although it's a damn sad state of affairs. Because you need both the man and female for a family. It's better for the child, better for the family community if you have both parents present. As we see from the studies, orphans were re-educated and their identity changed. And the orphans used to repopulate and work on the Industrial Revolution. Yeah, this is interesting. Walt Disney seems to have an obsession with parentless children. 56 out of 140 movies were made from orphans. Made of an orphan, sorry. Moving on to the next chapter, repopulation and Cabbage Patch Babies. This is a very sinister chapter, actually. This is spooky to read. This is Dr. Kearney stole babies from hospitals in Paris and America and put them for sale in incubators at expositions in 1924 for the British Empire. Mind Unveiled apparently published a book about this, which I'd also want to read. Society would collapse if there was no repopulation, and we're starting to see this now as more women are deciding not to have children and also struggling to have children. Loads of women are having serious issues conceiving, which is concerning. And there seems to be less people wanting to have families because of inflation that we're currently experiencing. It's never the right time to have kids, it seems. I've got 2 of my own, so yes, I would understand. There are quite a few documentaries on the repopulation issue because Jordan Peterson, I'm a fan of him, mentions this. And there's another documentary on YouTube of the issues. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but if you search it up on YouTube, it should come up. It's very interesting. You should go and watch anything to do with repopulation and the downfall of babies. Chapter 14 is about the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was a period of time where powerful and wealthy men took to reverse engineer the technology that remained from the Tartaria Empire. These were the biggest innovations: photography, pneumatic tire, voltaic pile, internal combustion engine, typewriter, electromagnetics, phonograph, steam engine, spectrometer, metallurgy. He goes into some detail of each. Guy Anderson, the author of each invention, and he says there were many more inventions. They can't list them in the book, or the book would be humongous. Next chapter is Nikola Tesla. He has credited his mother for his interest in inventing. Duca Mandic made small household appliances as a hobby. Nikola Tesla's mother, he credits his mum for his interest in inventing, apparently. Tesla actually built dynamos and motors in Edison's electrical company. 1882 created an induction motor running on alternative current, converting electricity to mechanical power. See, Edison actually used direct current, so when Nikola Tesla thingied on an alternating current, Edison didn't like that because it went against his business. Another corporate greedy man, I suppose. This is interesting as well. Tesla built the hydroelectric dam at Niagara Falls. I don't mean built it, I think he designed the concept of it, and loads of people were bored to make this dam. I think loads of people died building it as well. Tesla's renowned for building the Tesla coil. In Tesla's safe, there were 200,000 documents. There is a request from it from the 1980s Freedom of Information Act. His first patent was number 334,823, if you want to go look it up. This is also interesting because it's also, again, relating back to free energy. Dmitry Petronov invented a patented plasma battery that powered his home for 14 months. There are many other fascinating names I won't include in this video. You need to read Guy Anderson's book to find out what those names are. But I find that name interesting because I watched Candace Owens' podcast with a guy about the missing airlines of Malaysia Airlines. And so this is where the plasma battery comes into play because, again, I'd say go and watch Candace Owens' podcast about Malaysian Airlines going missing and watch the full video, and you'll find out more about why it relates to the airlines going missing and these plasma things. If you know, you know. If you don't, research it. The last chapter, this research, which is very fitting, it mentions something called the Pyramid of Power. Again, you need to look that up. It's a long time coming. Ownership will be the thing of the past, as mentioned by Klaus Schwab. Ugh. That is World Economic Forum, evil people. The hijacking of education, Carnegie and Rockefeller, another pair of evil people. I'm sure they may have had good intentions from the beginning, but not anymore. And again, WEF and WHO, World Health Organization, World Economic Forum. All in all, I gave this book 4.9 out of 5 and did write a little review on it because it was mind-blowing, and it's listed a load of references to look up myself, which I always love because I do like to do my own research. I don't trust many people anymore through my own experiences during COVID. So it's been an eye-opening experience, and I hope you like the book review. Again, this is the book. It comes in a hardback. I got it off of Amazon. Hardback. This is how thick the book is. I know Guy Anderson is actually writing another book, and I would definitely be happy to give it a read because this was a mind-blowing book for me. Thank you for watching. Goodbye for now.